Hi, I'm Tony. I'm Chef Tony. I will show you I'm painting. Okay. So I can do.
Hi everyone and welcome to Creative Cakes by Sharon. Today I have a very special Christmas cake I want to share with you, and this is my 3D double-sided Santa and Frosty the Snowman cake. This little one that I created sits in the middle of my dining table at the moment, and everybody enjoys it, and we're definitely going to cut him up on Christmas Day and share it after our lunch. You can create this very unique cake for your own Christmas table, or why not create it as a special and very memorable gift for someone special. Whatever reason you make it for, I hope you play some Christmas carols and enjoy the creative process. Don't forget to stay tuned to my channel and watch me create other cakes just like this one, and you can do so by becoming a subscriber and clicking on the link you see on screen now. I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a wonderful festive season. Thanks for your support this year, and I hope you tune in next year. Now without any further ado, let's get started.
So I've got 5 store-bought fruit cakes here, and I've got 3 for the body and 2 for the head. Each of these are approximately 5 by 5 inches. I've got a 5-inch round cake setup board, and I'm only using this as a guide to cut out the circles, as well as a smaller round cookie cutter. You can use any round shapes you like, so long as you end up with 2 different sizes. So to start with, I've just placed my cake board on top of the cake, and I'm going to cut around the cake board with my knife for 3 of the cakes to get a nice large round shape, and use the cookie cutter to cut out the 2 smaller circles. With all of the leftover pieces of cake, I'm going to store them in a bowl with some plastic wrap, because I'm going to create some little Christmas puddings, and you can check out my videos for these by clicking the links in the description box below. Now I need to stack my cake, so I need to stack the 3 larger ones as well as the 2 smaller ones, and in between each of the cakes I'm just going to rub on a thin layer of some apricot jam. To get a nice body shape for my Santa and Frosty the Snowman, I need to trim off the tops of the cake so it's a little bit round. So I'm just going to go around with my knife at the top of the cake and cut off the very edge of the cakes. Then using these cut-offs and some of the apricot jam, I'm going to stick these bits to the centre of the cake so it becomes a little bit more round in the tummy area of the snowman and Santa. I just need to press firmly on these extra cut-offs onto the cake, and it just naturally sticks because of the stickiness of the cake itself. At this point, I'd still like my cake to be a little bit more round at the top, so I'm going to trim off some more of the cake, and again stick these cut-offs back onto the cake where I want the cake to be more round. Now I've pretty much got the shape that I want for the body of Santa and the snowman. But before I do anything else, I'm just going to cover the cake with some plastic wrap and press down with my hands nice and firmly, creating a bit more contour and shape, and just making sure that the cake is fully compacted and the edges are as smooth as I can possibly get them. For the head of the Santa and Frosty, I'm going to do the same thing, and because it's a little bit smaller, I can wrap the whole thing in the plastic wrap and roll it on my bench till I get a nice round shape for the head. The next thing I'm going to do is cover both the body and the head in some chocolate ganache. I'm going to make sure I've got a nice generous layer of ganache over both cakes, and try and get it as smooth as possible before popping both in the fridge for about 15 minutes to set. After 15 minutes, the ganache is set, but it's still soft enough to smooth over, and I do this by dipping my spatula in some boiling water, wiping off the excess moisture and gliding my spatula over the cake until I've got a beautiful smooth surface on both of my cakes. At this point, I'm going to transfer just the body of my cake onto my cake board. Now it's time to start the fun part, and that's covering the cake. So I've rolled out some red fondant, and I'm just trimming one end so it's nice and straight at the bottom. I'm just carefully lifting up my fondant and placing it on one half of the cake, and then using the knife I'm going to trim the fondant so it's only covering one half of my cake, coming up one side of the cake, across the top and down the other side. Now using a little ball of the red fondant, I'm just going to use it to smooth over the cake. Now to cover the other side, I'm going to do exactly the same thing except with my white fondant. And where the white and the red meets, I'm just going to press the fondant down a little bit so the crease is visible, and then run my knife along the edge of the crease, trimming off the excess fondant and then carefully pushing the red and the white fondant together to close up any gaps in the seam. Now that the bodies are covered, I can work on the decoration. I'm going to start with Santa's jacket. So I've rolled out 2 long, fairly thick snakes of white fondant, and I'm just going to use some flour glue to paint on where I want the trim of Santa's jacket to be, and then adhere the white trim to the cake. To make Santa's arms, I've got some red fondant which I'm going to divide in two. So I've got 2 equal portions, and I'm going to roll them into a very large teardrop shape and just flatten them out gently and stick them on using some of my flour glue. For Santa's hand, I've got a ball of fondant which again I'm going to cut in 2 and roll it in my palm just to get a bit of a ball shape and flatten it out with my thumb. Using the knife, I'm going to make a little cut in the fondant to separate the hands and the thumb and just round off those 2 edges. I'm going to squeeze the fondant down where the wrist is and just cut off this little piece of extra fondant. Once I've stuck the hand onto the cake, I'm just going to roll this piece of fondant that I trimmed off into a little bit of a long flat snake and stick it on the edge of his arm and hand to create the trim at the bottom of the sleeve. And then of course repeat this process for his other hand. Santa's belt was made by rolling out a nice thin piece of black fondant, which I'm just going to adhere around the centre of his tummy. And then using a little bit of brown fondant, I've cut out a little buckle by cutting a square and then cutting a smaller square from the inside and sticking it onto the centre. Now as you can see, I've spun my cake around and I'm going to add some details for Frosty. I've rolled out 2 small black pieces of fondant and flattened them for the buttons, and I'm rolling out 2 very long teardrop shaped pieces of white fondant for the arms. All of these are going to get stuck on the cake now. With the head for the cake, I'm going to cover the entire thing in a piece of white fondant, smoothing down the edges, trimming off the excess and just tucking the little bit left over underneath. And to secure it to the top of the cake, I'm going to stick in a long skewer into the cake and just slide the head onto the top of the skewer. Here I've got some ivory fondant and I'm going to use this to start working on Santa's face. So I'm going to stick this across the front of the cake on Santa's side. I've rolled out some red fondant which I'm just going to lay at the top of his head. Trim off the excess at the back so it's only covering half of the head, and tuck the fondant under so it rolls into a nice little point on one end. Santa's beard and moustache was made with a nice thick piece of fondant cut into a triangular shape and adhered to the bottom of his face, and 2 little teardrops for the moustache, followed by a nice little ball of ivory fondant for his nose. While I'm working with the white fondant, I've stuck on 2 little eyes and 2 bushy little eyebrows, as well as the white trim for his hat, followed by the black pupils and the little white reflections in his eyes. Now I'm going to use this round disc of fondant to create a little pom-pom at the end of his hat. I want to create a cute little smirk on Frosty's face. You can create any expression you like. I've just used some black fondant to create a half a smile, 2 red cheeks, a little red nose, some blue eyes, some cute little raised eyebrows. I've cut 2 strips of blue fondant for a scarf, as well as some blue fondant for his hat. And if you regularly watch my videos, you know I like to add a little bit of definition with some petal dust, which I'm going to add to Frosty's cheeks as well as Santa's cheeks and his nose. I've embellished Frosty's hat and his scarf with some little stars. Of course you can add any other decorations you like to both Frosty and Santa. And here it is guys, my 3D double-sided Santa Claus and Frosty the Snowman Christmas cake. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial.